Meeting. We have an early start tonight. We're starting meetings at 6:30 now. We have a short agenda, which is good for this evening. And we're going to start off with 350 North Spring Mill Road. We have the Villanova train station parking lot upgrades.
Hey, Don. Good evening. Dave Falcone with Saul Ewing here on behalf of SEPTA. I will speak very briefly just about the project and then turn it over to our engineer and landscape architect, who are exponentially more qualified to speak with you all tonight. So the project is, as you've described, a general renovation improvement to the existing Villanova train station. What SEPTA is proposing to do is change some of the access pattern, fix some of the loading, and expand the parking lot. As part of that expansion, we are obviously proposing new plantings along with the new parking spaces. Those plantings are shown on this plan. They consist of new plantings at the entrance, as well as plantings in the islands, which are being proposed. What is not shown on this plan, which is the landscaping plan, which was discussed at our last meeting with the commissioners, is islands which are being placed at the top of the parking lot adjacent to Villanova Law School. There will be islands at the top which are shown on this plan. You can see here 1, 2, 3 islands. Those will be planted in the same fashion as the other islands, which are shown on the landscaping plan. That's at the request of the commissioners and the Planning Commission. So you'll have 1, 2, 3 islands at the top, which are not shown, and again, they'll be planted in the same fashion as well. 1, 2, 3 islands at the bottom. There is a 4th that will not be planted pursuant to the waiver that we requested because of existing catenary structures. So there is no trees in that island, or as I believe in this island as well. Is that right, Julie?
That is correct.
Sure. Yep. The main plan I think we'll discuss tonight is the landscaping plan, which is L101. Yep, so again, as discussed, there'll be 3 additional islands at the top of the parking lot. Those islands will contain canopy trees, as are shown in the islands towards the bottom. There'll also be plantings in the islands in the rear parking area, which again are not shown on this landscaping plan as it's been revised since our preliminary approval.
We don't have that sheet in here with those cutouts.
You do.
Oh, what page is that on?
Be going back to sheet G103. G.
About 5 in. Oh, there you go. Okay. Thank you.
Sure, and you'll notice on this plan, you can see the islands at the top of the parking area, 3 islands, as well as the islands in the new, it's defined as the new lease area, 1, 2, 3, 4 islands. 3 of those will be planted.
So we have, there's no new trees coming out with this project. Are there trees being removed?
There are trees being removed.
Okay.
There is an existing tree on the entrance to the parking lot. That will be removed. In its place will be 1 canopy tree and 4 understory trees. And then there are trees being removed as part of the renovation on the opposite side of the train station, which is platform improvements. There are evergreens that are coming out on this side. And because of the expansion, there are no new trees being planted on this side of the tracks.
Okay, so do we,
And we do have a plan that shows those trees.
Trees being removed?
Trees being removed, yes. It's the demolition plan. It's C-107.
so, or do we have total number of trees coming down listed, or,
We do not, is that correct?
so how many trees are coming down?
20 trees
Okay,
on this side, or 19 on this side, and 1 on the other side, and 21 collection of canopy and understory are being planted. No, no heritage trees are being removed.
okay, so we just need to know the species size of what's getting taken down.
Mhm.
And then we need to see the calculation for our compensatory plantings as far as what's, so you can fulfill our requirement.
Okay.
What's going in. I'm sure you're over that with your, how many, have you calculated how many new trees are going back in, or?
It's 21. Again, it's a collection of canopy and understory in the islands as well as in the entrance.
Okay. Did you do the calculation per the ordinance?
So that would be up to our engineer and our landscape. Have we done
No,
any?
we have not done that at this point.
Okay. Because that's the most relevant thing to us right now, as far as what's coming down, species size, what's getting replaced per our ordinance.
Okay.
To fulfill our questions here.
Okay.
So, once we have that in place, we can go back and see what your landscape plan is, what we're going to put back in, as far as what kind of trees. And do we have any idea of what's going to go back into, as far as species go?
We don't.
What's going to be
Yes,
replaced?
canopy trees
So
were-
hop up here.
The canopy trees are shown as white oak, and the understory are Cercis canadensis or redbud.
Okay.
Are those acceptable?
Sure, I believe everything's, they're all in our in our ordinance as being trees that have passed, acceptable
Okay.
for a township. Are they, in all the parking areas, they're going to be white oaks planted?
Yeah, it's just for consistency. The canopy trees will all be white oaks.
Got you. How big are our openings for our planting islands?
The planting islands are 10 feet wide by 18 feet long. The parking stalls are 18 feet.
Basic parking spot?
Right, yes, it's more or less a parking spot.
Okay. And just the white oak is a very mature, becomes a very mature, graceful tree, given the right circumstances. Sometimes when we put them into a parking area, they may have a hard time becoming that mature height. Not that they won't live for a certain amount of time, but just their root system is going to be very confined, being around so much impervious, that they may have a hard time reaching their mature state in that spot. That's the only thing. It's a great tree. It's going to live there for sure. Just don't know how. It might not live there 100 years, being that tight little spot. That's our only question, is what plant would do the best in that location. The white oak will thrive to a certain point, and then it would become unable to thrive because it would be so confined into that kind of little box that it's planted in. So, group, do we have any thought maybe of maybe an additional tree, something else besides white oak that we could recommend to them that would do well in the parking spot?
I'd defer to you on that. I know, what comes to mind with me is London plane trees do well. And that would be an area that would be isolated, so it wouldn't be, what does that get, the canker sometimes, the black canker?
Well, they can have a couple of disease problems, yeah.
Yeah, but usually not if it's not exposed, if there's nothing else in that area, it won't get it, so. London plane, I know, works good in small areas.
Tough tree, ginkgo would do well in a tough urban environment, in a tight
What do you
spot like
think of
that.
swamp white oak? I know that they're using that in Manhattan, in the World Trade Center, where there's very limited soil as well.
That would be another option that you could have. They did a lot of work to that spot to have them, enable them to have enough root
Yeah.
area to grow. But
I think-
that may be a better alternative than putting a white oak in that spot. Other swamp white oak would be a possibility. I think that would be an alternate than putting a white oak in there.
Would you prefer that we switch?
Yeah, box elder would be kind of the stuff might fall apart, yeah, in the parking lot there, yeah. But the swamp white oak would be a better choice, I think, than putting in the white oak in that spot.
Okay.
All right. And then as far as your evergreens, have you decided on what you're going to plant? Is there some evergreen screening going in, or is it just those canopy trees, understory trees? And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you do the calculation at all as far as your diameters of what's coming out, and then how many canopy trees we need to be putting back in?
No, we have not.
Okay. Because that's going to be kind of integral to,
Right, we kind of, we kind of wanted to get a feel for what, the Shade Tree Commission was looking for exactly as far as species and that kind of thing, to be able to give you as comprehensive a plan as we could.
okay.
So we will make what the revisions that we need to make, and then do the calculations as required.
Okay. Steve, just have a question. We just don't know the size. We know how many trees are coming down. We just don't know what the species or size they're coming down. So in order to make a recommendation tonight, I'm sure they want to get going on what they want to do. We just don't know how, I just don't know how to go forward as a group here to give a partial approval, or how do you think?
I want to ask Mr. Falcone where you stand right now in the process, the entire process, and where this meeting stands in amongst all that.
Yeah, so we've received preliminary approval.
Right.
And we are in the process of moving forward with final, but we haven't appeared before planning or certainly
Right.
the board. So we're early in the process in the
So
final.
my suggestion would be that they're that early in, that maybe they come back to Shade Tree next month with the appropriate tables. If it's not going to hurt their schedule, they can take all your comments, provide the appropriate tables of what's coming down, what's required, and hopefully, if that's all done and the board agrees, we'll get them out in the July meeting, and then this certain cog in the wheel is done, if that doesn't slow things down otherwise.
I don't see how it could at this point. Yeah.
Would that be agreeable for the group here if they can come back to us next month with the tables and information so we can make a recommendation for them?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Agreed,
We could
yeah.
give a little more thought also to what might fit into that area, because that question kind of got us by surprise.
By them coming to
Swamp white
know.
oak's good.
White oak should be good,
I think if they can make a little bit more diversity in your understory for us, instead of just red buds, just pick out a few more understory plants that you think would be appropriate in that area, just so we have a little diversity and maybe some color contrast, just to brighten things up a little bit.
Sure.
All right?
By taking this commission's advice tonight, maybe then it's just one more meeting, so that would be. Could I ask one favor of the board, to please speak into their mics so the folks at home can hear you?
Sure.
Can't hear you either. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. We'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have 107 Hillside. Is that here tonight, Sue? Or is that? That's off, okay. So we have 216 Spruce Tree. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking on the wrong, sorry about that. I got 295 Hares Lane. New construction, 500 yards of soil to be kept on site.
Good evening. I'm Scott Emerson on behalf of the applicant for 295 Hares Lane. I don't know if some of the board members were around when we had this subdivision approval, but the property that you're looking at was a result of a two-lot subdivision for 299 Hares Lane and 295 Hares Lane. So what we're showing here is just the overall subdivision, so you can kind of get your bearing of what was done. During that subdivision process, we identified 9 site trees that had to be removed. None of them were heritage trees. We've provided the replacement trees for all the ones that were going to be taken out. And in addition to that, there was a 147-inch ash tree, which we're going to retain. But in the event, if something happened to it, we've already provided 6 additional trees just in case. So they're already included into the application. They're already included in the escrows and the budgets and everything else. So we provided that, as well as a dying hemlock hedgerow that was existing. And actually, Mother Nature this winter kind of did its number on it with the ice storm and took that down. But we've also provided additional trees for that. What we have before you tonight is just the application for 295 Hares Lane, which is also known as Lot 2, which is the downhill lot, so to speak, as the subdivision's provided. The plan itself is identical to the subdivision plan, excepting the fact we have an actual footprint from our buyers for Lot 2. They've chosen a specific model, which actually has a smaller footprint than the subdivision plan. And the stormwater management system is now subsurface, as they decided they wanted to do. Initially, we were doing an above-surface system. But as far as the grading, the tree protection, the trees to remain, the trees to be removed, everything remains the same.
So you already have approval from us on both lots, right?
Correct.
So you're back here tonight because you have the actual footprint?
Yeah, this is the ENS application, and I guess the township's requirements is any ENS application still has to go back to the Shade Tree Commission, even though it's already been reviewed. So yeah, because in the event that the footprint would be different or something like that.
Mr. Chairman, the reason it's back is it's in for grading permit for
Right.
them to actually build that home.
Okay.
And the
Kicks out
cubic
dust.
yardage of dirt triggers you coming back here.
Okay.
But you did see this previously. The only one item, not unless the board sees fit, I would just like to make sure they have the appropriate tree protection detail on their plan. I mean, I'm looking, and again, we only have the one sheet, one of one, but we're not showing the appropriate chain link detail.
He's correct, and that is on the development plans, but that's obviously, we're expecting comments from the township engineer, and we'll make sure the chain link fence is on this application, this grading permit plan, but it is shown on development plans, just so the board's aware.
Is that on site, Joe? Yeah. Okay, so it's already up? It's up. All right, yeah. Okay. And in reference to the water management system, there's no existing trees for the impact of that, because that would be different, right?
No.
Or the soil stockpile, the location of that?
No.
Impacting anything else?
No.
Everything else stays the same,
Yes.
right? The tree protection that we voted on before, everything, all trees are staying?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Where's the stockpile shown here? Here?
Yep. Okay, so we're all in
Looks good to me.
agreement? We're good?
Yep.
Very good. Go ahead with the project.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, next up, we have, now we're up to 216 Spruce Tree. Right, so? Anyone here from that project? Demo, existing house? All right, we're going to table that. Next up is 125 Drake's Drum Drive, pool construction.
Hello. I represent I'm a pool company called Parkway Pools and Patio, and we're building a swimming pool on 125 Drake Drum Drive. We've indicated all the trees that are on site. We have no intentions of removing anything that's presently there. The pool will be built in the existing configuration with the existing trees that are on site.
Okay, we're taking the soil off-site.
We're taking, there'll be some soil taken off site, yes. There's a grading to the property, and with the property dips, and it will be redistributed over there. There's probably about 10 to 20 yards of dirt that will be removed when, depending upon how the grade finally finishes off.
All right, you're showing, where are you showing your topsoil stockpile going to be?
Well, it'll be, we're going to take it off-site as we remove it, but I have a silt fence built in there along, as you can see on the backside there, as we stockpile along that back corner there.
All right. We have a 6-inch dogwood to the south of the proposed pool here.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're not showing any proposed grade change lines, you're only showing a little bit on the west side here,
Correct.
but you're going to have to grade this off.
Well, the property on the north side is 327.
Yeah.
Property on the south side is, I think it's 320, excuse me, 326. It's only a foot drop.
Right, you're still going to have to grade around the pool. I'm just, this 6-inch dogwood is going to be right within your grade change line, basically, right?
I'm not sure how that taupe line comes right in there. We're talking about less than, from one spot to the next, you're talking 1 foot. I'm not,
No, I'm just saying, I mean, there's no tree protection fence around it. I mean, is it a tree you want to save? or is it-
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
Is it a tree you want to save, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have any intentions of removing it.
Okay, then we need to get some tree protection around that 6-inch
Okay.
dogwood. And I'm just, I mean, whenever we build a pool, usually you got to grade around the
So
pool.
we'll put a
Right.
silt fence in front of it.
Yeah, tree protection fence in front of
Okay.
it, and you have to show the tree protection fence detail on your plan.
Okay.
So we know. And if your soil, if there's going to be stockpiling your topsoil to reuse, to grade with, you have to show the location of that somewhere on the plan, where it's going to be.
Okay, usually the indication of the silt fence reflects that, but in every township's different and every requirement's.
Is that, we require that, Steve? I mean, we just want to see where it's going, right?
Correct. So the applicant is also in for the grading permit, so I think all your comments are appropriate and need to be reflected for our reviewer of the grading permit. You know, usually we like to see a proposed contour line so the commission can see just what the extent of the grading is. The tree protection fence is a requirement along with the detail of that, so that when the inspector goes out in site, they you know, everybody's on the same page.
So other than that, it's pretty straightforward build,
Yeah.
I'd imagine, right?
I'm sorry,
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I understand. Just indicate where the stockpile is going to be and do an explosive of the dogwood tree to show how it's going to be protected.
Correct.
Okay.
So my request to the commission would be if we just reflect those notes to the reviewer, the plan reviewer, and then they could move forward from there.
That's fine. Board, how do we vote on that?
I agree.
In favor?
Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it.
Okay. We have 9 Ridgewood Road. 11 trees removed, 6 were rotten.
Hi, I'm Carol Arnold. I'm the homeowner. I'm going to introduce Mark Nabinski, who's the tree guy, and I guess we just need to rectify a situation. We had new sewer at the purchase of the property installed. Some of the trees were the 3 on the right side of the property. And then some with rot. The one tree, I guess, that's in question is really how to, or what the calculation would be to replace a heritage tree that was encroaching on the driveway and blocking water flow from the back of the house.
Okay.
So I'll have Mark speak to probably any questions you have. He would be much better.
All right, so we have a total of, how many trees were taken down?
There are 11 total.
Okay.
3 were with the septic permit.
Okay. Three were with the septic permit.
7 were rot, and then 1 is the one that was encroaching the driveway, buckling the driveway, and then causing water to back up at the back of the property and then enter the house, which is the unfortunate part.
Okay. So 11 total, 3 were with the original septic permit. Okay,
permit,
so
yes.
We have 7 more trees that were removed without a permit.
Yes,
One of them was a heritage tree.
yes.
Okay.
And I
Actually,
apologize.
8 more trees. There's 11 total
8,
trees.
I'm sorry,
11.
8.
Three-
7
yeah.
plus the 1 heritage.
Yeah.
So 8 trees total. Out of the 8 trees that were removed, a couple of them were in poor shape.
7 of them.
7.
So they were all.
They were either ice damaged or rot. There's a huge, it's an acre lot, and right now existing, there are 87 trees on the property after the 11 were removed. So it was a very densely wooded lot and a neglected property.
Okay.
So between the ice storm and years of neglect, there were some issues. I think where we ran into it is, although I was born and raised here, I moved back here after 27 years, so I wasn't aware of this commission in January. And then the property line, the house next door is, or 2 doors down is Upper Marion. And I think when Mark came in, he assumed he had done work at that property, that we were in Upper Marion. So we were neglectful, definitely. So now we want to know how to rectify it properly.
Well, when you applied for your septic permit, did they ask you about if you were taking any trees down?
No.
Well, there was,
Just the septic one. I'm sorry, this is Bob Lane, he's the contractor.
yes. We did the original septic, there was a drain field in the back that we had to remove trees for the drain field.
Right.
And Doug had come out and looked at all that and approved all those trees at the time we were doing the drain field. But then in the front of the house where the tanks were installed, there's 3 trees that are right around that area that they ended up damaging the roots when they had to put the tanks in. So, you know, there was trees initially when they first did it, and then these 3 trees were done after the tanks were installed because they had damaged the root structure when they installed the tanks. So Doug approved them as part of the original septic plan to get taken down. While they were coming out to take those trees down, there was a bunch of trees that had a rot that we had taken down at the same time. So that's where it's kind of a 2-step process. Originally,
That we
when they
muddled.
first approved the septic plan, they took about the ones in the backyard for the drain field, and then these were done as a second project.
So Doug came out and he saw the tree, the 3 trees were already approved to come out. And then when he came back, all these other trees were taken down.
Correct.
And then he said,
I was unaware that we had to get approval for the additional trees, and then he's like, and then that's when we came to this, that, you know, these trees needed approval. One, the most important one being the heritage tree that was at the edge of the driveway,
right.
so.
So we have a case basically, that what we're talking about is just there was 8 trees taken down. We'll disregard the 3 trees because that was part already approved. So there's 8 trees taken down. Out of the 8, we have 1 heritage tree.
Right,
So the heritage tree triggers compensatory planting.
right.
So a 30-inch heritage tree, compensatory planting is 6 trees.
Right.
So out of the 6 trees, we recommend that 4 of them are canopy trees.
Okay.
would not like a dogwood tree, but a tree that would be like a big maple tree.
Right. And I think that's part of the struggle of this property, is that there are so many canopy trees. That's why we had so many trees with rot and problems. Mark might be able to speak to it too. I'm just not sure. We'll figure out where to put them, will be the next.
There are other options.
issues.
We have a shade tree fund,
Okay,
and I'm looking at what the arborist is writing, and it looks to me like the total compensatory trees would be 9. So conceivably, you could make a contribution to the shade tree fund,
Okay.
and we change that ordinance to go to $250
Per tree.
per tree. So you
Okay.
would write a check to the shade tree fund for that amount, and that's in lieu of planting, and that's for just one of these
Okay.
purposes. If it's a heavily
In lieu of
wooded lot,
planting 9 or in lieu of planting 6?
that would be in lieu of planting 9.
Okay,
Because our arborist's recommendation was 6 for the 30-inch tree, and, I'm sorry, actually, he's recommending 12, I apologize. 6 for the 30-inch and 6 for the 3 trees that did not reveal decay. Because I look at it, and so you had the septic system, which Doug
Right.
approved, because number one, it was 5 trees or under, it was so that was fine.
right.
And then, but
The
there's.
additional 3 in the front.
There's
and the
additional
cesspool
trees
need
that
to
were,
be-
the 3 additional trees that did not reveal the decay is what he's asking for, the additional compensatory plantings.
And are those the 3 in the cesspool that needed in the front?
Yeah,
There's a
that's-
tank, a cesspool tank in the front yard that needs to be collapsed because it's the old system, that's the yellow on the drawing, and those 3 are the ones that had to come down because that collapse will destroy the trees.
Well, Doug must have seen that, right?
He did, and I spoke
Yes.
to him this week, and I thought he was putting a letter in to the commission.
He has his, our engineering report, like our field visit report.
Okay.
And there's a lot of pictures here. hang on.
26-inch black oak, 303.
That's the heritage, no, that's the front.
26. Less than a heritage, but it's a nice sized tree. It's a good tree.
Yeah, that's
Was
the one
that
next,
ice
next, the one
damage?
next to the cesspool.
Yeah,
Over
there
here.
two and 3
It
were,
doesn't say that,
no, it's
4 or 5?
4 and 5, or the cesspool.
And 11's the cesspool drain.
That's the drain coming down through.
That's
That was
probably one
small.
of the ones, I think, once replaced, the 26-inch black oak.
Well,
It's hard to tell now.
what we're trying to note is if Doug saw these 3 other trees had to be condemned because they were on the side of the cesspool, so that's the reason they had to come out.
Yeah.
Even if they're healthy trees, Doug said they had to come out, so.
Well, I guess they were going to collapse when the cesspool had to be collapsed, so that has to be filled and.
Right. So it's
Whatever
tree
you do. I don't know.
4, 5, and tree 11.
Right.
Right.
About that, right.
Is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm just trying to figure this out here.
yeah,
Yep.
sorry.
Is okay? No, it's okay.
No, if you
Four-
go to, and tree 8,
4,
9,
5
and 10 really were just stalks of dead trees that
All right,
there's.
4, 5, and 11 are all oaks that were on the edge of the cesspool that
Right.
had to get caved in.
They were all healthy according to this report from MJN.
Yeah, the only thing wrong with those trees, if they didn't have to collapse the tank where they were fighting for sun and they were growing over the roof, so they were coming up and hooking really hard, they probably would have continued to grow that way because the other trees were way taller, maybe another 50 feet taller than them. So they were going up and hooking over the roof.
I think what Doug was looking at is, so we had 3 trees to start, which falls outside the purview of the Shade Tree Commission. But when we start to look at the site in total, it all,
They added up.
in the aggregate, it now comes up to your commission, and the compensatory plantings kick in.
Wait, I'm just trying to figure out if he condemned these 3 trees as part of the cesspool thing, so they don't count too, Steve, or is that's, I mean.
I looked at it as they had to, I mean, no different than a construction project.
They had to
So
come
they
down.
had to come down.
Right, so there'd be compensatory trees for them because they.
Right, like if you're putting your garage up and you had to remove 3 trees because your garage was going up, in total, then as part of that aggregate, you would have compensatory plantings. But I understand if you've seen the lot.
Septic failed, at inspection. So part of buying the property was the new field, which was engineered by the township. So that, the rear ones and these three were part of that permitting process? Is that where
We don't design the fields,
Right,
but I mean,
exactly.
Doug is
approved
also our SEO, our sewage enforcement officer.
Okay.
So he wears two hats.
Okay.
All right, so what we're trying to figure out is what we're asking for compensatory trees at this point, because the trees that were cut down.
According to the arborist, and I believe I see his logic, there would be 12 compensatory trees. 6 for the heritage and 2 each for the 3 healthy trees that were removed.
So the
Even if the 3 healthy had to be removed because of the cesspool?
Right, that's what I was getting at. So when an applicant
Okay,
comes
that's what
in,
I'm saying.
if they were putting up a new garage
Okay.
and took down 10 trees, they would do compensatory plantings for those 10 trees because their garage is there. So in a similar fashion, it's a little different because
Right,
they're
yeah,
septic
yeah,
tanks,
I'm
but
just trying to
as
understand.
part of the construction, you had to remove the existing tanks and trees came down. That's the way I see it, but I mean, the commission can look at it differently. The recommendation of the arborist is 12 trees. It's your,
Did he specify what the breakout is, Steve, as far as canopy trees or understory trees or anything like that?
because of the heritage, you're going to get the 4 large
Four
canopy
and two,
trees.
right?
And the others were, hang on. Would just be the standard 2.5-inch caliper trees. But in contributions to the shade tree fund, we look at them all the same.
Okay.
So it's still $250 a tree.
Okay.
Whether it's a large we just look at, we said it was $250 per tree.
Okay. So it's 4 canopy trees and 8 2.5 caliber or greater
Right.
of any species. Okay.
Well, the species are on the back here.
Oh, okay, and the species
Need to
list.
print this
Okay,
out.
thank you. Okay.
I'll make a copy of that.
I have a question for, so Mr. Novitsky, you're now licensed in the township as a
Yes.
arborist?
Yes.
And you're given our rules and regulations?
Yeah, it should need.
So you're fully aware of all this now, and we're not going to have any other incidents like this?
There's a lot, yes.
With anything moving forward?
And I'll check, when I think I'm on the cusp of a property line between one township and the other, I'll,
Just know when you're in Radnor,
And
go to your sheet and look at what you have to do, okay? Because there are no rules, barely inch or different, and we are very specific
Right, Upper Merritt.
as to what we do in Radnor. So now that you're registered, you have the
And
rules.
it would be helpful as a homeowner, like, because we went through the whole septic, if the septic inspector would have explained the Shade Tree Commission at that point, I think because he knew it was under the initial limit,
Right.
it was never discussed. So that was, our neglect when we had someone on site and there were down trees and broken, and ice
Right.
storm trees and rotted trees. We just said, cut away, those things.
Clean it up.
So I'm not sure if it's with the permitting process or with the, whatever.
Well-
Granted, if you go on the website, but even to find this, there are 28 pages of fees and,
You can
no
always
permits.
remove a dead or decayed tree. Where the shade tree
Right.
ordinance kicks in is at 5, or
Right,
greater,
but
more
that-
than 5, or always a heritage tree, which is 30
Right.
inches or greater.
oh, and that makes sense.
But
It's
what we
just
always tell you too
when
is-
you're new to the area and it's not something you've ever been exposed to.
Right.
You're buying a blighted property that you're trying to restore and instead.
And
by
we
the
are
time you
thankful
turn
that you were
around,
doing
it's-
that.
Well.
For that neighborhood, we were very thankful.
Because every day it's a permit and a check, but.
But, and also, nobody's stopping you. It's not that you're not allowed to remove
Right,
trees.
right.
You're a property owner and you have rights.
Right.
Where it
Just
comes
trying
to is if that 30-inch tree, which is a heritage tree, was dangerous, all you have to do is have your licensed arborist
Right.
write up a report and take it down. We're
Well,
never going to
that-
let somebody get hurt
Right.
for that.
Right, and that's, hindsight would have been, if we were aware of that, that would have been done properly ahead of time.
Not
Yeah.
for diseased.
Yeah.
So the arborist recommendation was the 12 replacement trees.
Okay. Board, do we have comment on this?
The 2.5-inch caliper trees, they allowed you a really nice opportunity for some flowering trees or perhaps fruiting
Yeah,
trees,
definitely.
since you have so much canopy on your property, so that could provide you with
The
some.
problem is light on the property too, so we
Well, I
have to
mean, a
find
lot
the
of
ones
those
that would
thrive
need it.
under low light
Yeah.
conditions, so
Yeah.
that it might be
Yeah,
a
no, we'll-
positive.
we'll definitely find
when you're
the
feeling a
right
little
thing.
jammed in the situation. But
Yeah,
it's a nice
that'll-
gardening opportunity.
That'll be easy. The canopy scare me because I think it's just you're creating the problem down the road that these trees again are starved for space and light on a small property, so.
You could do a combination if you wish to plant 6 and donate to the Shade Tree Commission, Shade Tree Fund for 6.
Right,
So
okay.
you can mix and match.
Thank you.
Whatever works best for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Is that-
Thanks.
Very good. We're
Okay.
in agreement here, the 12 replacement trees.
Okay, great, thank you. And then how do we, then we just take photos of the trees, or we? how do
No,
we get-
you would contact Mrs. Jones here.
Okay, I see.
And if you're going to make a contribution to the Shade Tree Fund, she'll tell you how to do that.
Okay, good.
She will inform Doug of how many trees you will be planting, and Doug will come out and inspect those trees.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
we wait till fall to plant these trees?
Yeah.
So that they have a
Chance to
chance
live.
of living?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Or if somebody's going to be there with a order.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
great.
Great,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Okay. We have hazard tree removal approved by Township Arborist, and that letter with pictures was here. Sue, this is already approved. I have a letter of a 42-inch red oak at Eastern University that was approved by our Township Arborist as a hazard. Okay. You're requesting replacement three? Okay. I got it. Okay. Yes.
I know this might be a little odd. My name's Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road, and I attend regular township meetings and many of the Planning Commission meetings. I was also a person in standing in the conditional use process for Ardrossan and attended every single meeting. That being said, I thought it was important that I come tonight and express some opinions to you from many of the residents that did attend the last Planning Commission meeting where the preliminary plan for Ardrossan Main Tract was introduced. And in that plan was the preliminary plan was the landscape plan for the ridge, or what we call the buffer that is on the ridge. It was not met with any happy faces. And I wanted to just give you some information if you weren't given that beforehand.
Okay.
What I'm giving you is the judge's ruling and then prototypical buffers in another area. And it delineates a buffer that's similar to what we expected for screening.
Is this what you have here too?
No, that's just a map.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You can't-
I'll put it nicely, yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
What's your name again?
Leslie Morgan.
All right, Leslie Morgan, thanks.
There you go. Okay. I think I want to. This is 100-foot wide by thousands and thousands of feet. I think it's supposed to continue down there. But anyways, it sits on the ridge. And we had, the township had two options to purchase this particular track called the Ryfield track. It could include the buffer, or the buffer could be on the other side with the applicant for screening. And in that packet I just gave you, if you could flip to the last page, or the last two pages. It delineates the different conditions. And the first one talks about lots 3.2 to 3.10. Additionally, item 2 also speaks to it. But essentially, I wanted to give you my thoughts as a resident and a taxpayer. It was very clear attending all the meetings and being involved in the conditional use process that many of the residents in Radnor wanted the purchase of these land tracts, no problem. Secondarily, with that was consistent, and you could go back and listen to 40 hours of testimony probably, that they absolutely demanded the screening of that buffer so that from their commuter shed, which I call the roads of Darby Paola and Newtown Road, they did not see the houses. Each and every commissioner that voted for the use of taxpayer funding to supplement the development promised the residents of Radnor that no houses would be seen except for a few rooftops. So when we attended the preliminary plan, you could imagine the disappointment of the landscape plan that was shown us. And I couldn't believe that what we were told, because I didn't come to the first introduction to the shade tree of Radros, and I should have. I expected that would be done in just class, just beautifully done. I didn't expect that we would be shortchanged. So I will hopefully attend further ones. But
Can you be specific? Sorry to
Yes,
interrupt
I'm
you.
going to.
Can you be
Okay,
specific about how
absolutely.
you think you were shortchanged? Because I'm puzzled.
I'm going to run back to and get.
Yeah.
I would like to note also, and I was asking Steve, I will try and get it for your next meeting. The township, during the conditional use process, and maybe some of you attended the meetings, actually spent money and hired an outside firm to do engineering studies of how much conifers and trees would have to be planted in that 100-foot buffer to achieve the objective of just a few rooftops. That was done. It's somewhere. I don't know what it's called, and I was asking Steve what it was called, because I think you might want to review that as well. But So this is what we were given, but it was very tiny because it's up on that screen. I blew it up. I got this from the township, and I believe there's like 105 trees there. Might be under 100, or it's between 100 and 108. And none of them are conifers. There's breaks in the density. And for 100 feet, it seems out of scale because this is the forest that you look up through there. And so it's hard to, like when we visualize it as people, maybe you guys are good at this, but when we look at it, these are, I think, 2.5 caliper, a third of them, and then 2/3 are less than 2.5 inch caliper. I think if I read their notes. That being said, if we plant this the way it is, there will be no screening 6 months of the year, end of story. Number two, it's not as dense as I thought it was going to be with different plants and different plant types. So I think a lot of people called it the J.C. Penney plan. We were expecting something more like this. Can we zone in on that? Do I have to take this sheet away, do you think?
Jim, could you zoom in?
Jim, could we zoom in a little? And I'm going to give this out to you guys, too.
Might want to slide that deep. There you go.
Okay. I was sort of hunting around this weekend on my iPad, and I found prototypical buffers in another township, in another state, and what they do. And I know that Steve said we have a lot of this in Saldo, which is why we didn't understand how the applicant could come in front of our planning commission saying, you guys loved his plan. And we're like, oh my goodness, it doesn't even screen it. And so I looked at this and just did a simple math thing. This is what I call a fun fact. This is a 50-foot wide buffer. We're talking about a 100-foot wide. We're talking thousands of feet. I don't know how. I know it's at least 2,000 feet, if not 4,000 feet. But this is 50 wide or deep by 100. And the math on that, what the applicant is proposing now, if you it would equate this with this being 100 feet, he would have to plant 2,520 plantings to achieve a normal buffer, because this is called a standard buffer. We didn't think we'd get standard in Radnor, but this is a standard buffer, okay? And so I just wanted to come here and make you aware that a lot of people do not think the plan as proposed is going to achieve the screening from the houses. You have two items, the lack of conifers, the lack of density, and also the breaks. And then there's another idea that has been posed by the applicant to phase it, meaning this, we're told that this whole development on the main track could take 15 years. And so he doesn't want to plant the buffer until each lot is sold. So when a lot is sold, then the buffer in front of that lot, it doesn't belong to that lot, but that piece that's most closely related to the house would be built. So you could have one part of the buffer at year 0 and one part of the buffer at year 15. And I think that might look strange too for a buffer, because as I know, most subdivisions in Radnor that I'm familiar with, when you do the buffer goes in. How you sell your houses and those landscape plans are separate, and that. So I think I've covered most of the things to let you know from the residents' point of view what we thought and how disappointed we were. And we're hoping that you help us in this cause so that we get screened as we were promised.
Ms. Mason, quick question.
Yes,
Was your
please.
example from north of the Mason-Dixon line or south of the Mason-Dixon line?
I know. I did pick
No,
this.
I'm like.
I can get one. I was just fiddling around with my iPad.
Sure.
And I didn't even know I was going to come. And so I said, isn't that interesting? But it is, that's a Tennessee. So I would think that Radnor, Pennsylvania has a lot more standards. We're a tree city. And I don't know about Tennessee except Peyton Manning.
No, to
but
that end,
I think that their property values are far less in Tennessee than Radnor.
Well, I was going to ask,
Just for some clarification, Mrs. Morgan, I may be wrong, but I was just conferring with Sue. Our interpretation of what it was is the buffer will be planted at once, but the landscaping for each lot, now that's the interior landscaping, whatever that homeowner, future resident wants to do.
Not at
will be
all,
doing.
Steve. I believe if you look back at the minutes.
Street tree? Like, that's like street?
No, not even street tree, just the individual. So these are going to be high-end homes, and it's anticipated that there will be extensive landscaping of some sort. That landscaping goes on a lot-by-lot basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas the
I agree on
buffer
that.
was to be done at one point.
we had we didn't hear anything that it was going to be phased in.
Okay, I believe that most people who listen to the preliminary plan, they wanted to do the buffer in a piecemeal basis too. I hope I'm wrong. I'm putting that as something that we didn't like either. So that's what we heard from the attorney that represented the applicant that night, I think, Steve, but I'll check it out,
Right.
you know.
What, in your opinion, the way I look at this, this was not a situation where this affected our ordinance. But basically, any plantings they do on this buffer are additional plantings. It's not, there was no trees being taken out that were a replacement formula. So in your opinion, what could we have done? I mean,
Well-
we're not approving the kind of buffer they're doing. I mean, the way I saw it, we weren't asked to approve the kind of buffer. Just the fact they're doing the buffer. Because all the plantings they're making are really voluntary.
Well, that's not what was sold to the township
No, I know,
during the
but-
conditional use, so let me be very clear, but I'm glad you brought that up, because many of the neighbors down in our Drossen area are saying that there are big, huge trees being culled out right now and called, what are they called when they're not very good anymore?
Hazardous?
Hazard, okay? And since the application is already in, I have not seen a table like you asked the, one of the people who came up,
Right.
the train station people. Yeah, I mean,
Saying
they're,
they're not removing any, period.
okay, I'm just saying that neighbors who live down there 24/7, have said they're taking trees down that are considered hazard. Maybe they are not. I don't live down there. I'm not going to question. It's one of the things that came up. If they are, obviously there can be, and I have to disagree with you. There was nothing voluntary about planting the buffer.
No, what I'm saying is,
As
from
part of the
our, as far
conditions.
as our authority, okay, for approving the buffer, I mean, we have, again, I think this relates to your question as to teeth. We really don't have a role in terms of approving the kind of buffer they do. Is that the way?
We don't even have the authority to dictate that they put a
Right.
buffer in. Sorry.
Yeah.
We don't have the authority to dictate that. That's the Board of Commissioners and things like that.
Okay, okay. So I just wanted to come and give our things, and, you know, I was very involved because I live right here on another density modification, and so, you know, this is probably 10 cents on the dollar the size of, this is 105, so it's very similar in width. There we go. So this is 115 Stratford. This is a density modification in an R4 zone, and the neighbors and the applicant ended up being forced to work together. And per your shade tree, I thought, and Saldo, what ended up being is to meet the Saldo and your provisions. This is what 3 house lots in an R4, which is basically a quarter-acre lots, okay? These are 1.25 acre on the ridge there. Ended up being, I think there's 3 times as many plantings as what was proposed on the entire ridge of Ardrossan that was back here. So I don't know all the ramifications yet because I haven't developed in Radnor Township. I've developed in other areas. So maybe Steve can enlighten me, but we will be going to the Board of Commissioners too, obviously, and we'll be there and talking, because everybody wants this screened. Our feeling, to let you know, was that it seemed like the applicant cared more about his houses protecting their views, and there's no doubt that the judge ruled that the view is from the street level, that the protection for the screening was from the Darby Paoli vision. It says it right in his things. So,
Right, but if you read this, all it says is to maximize the view shed from the existing public roads and soften the impact of the view of the residential
the
structures.
view shed is from the residential streets was my point.
No, but
Not from the houses to be built. That's all I wanted to make. that
Right, but
point.
what I'm saying here is the
Yeah.
decision was it's not going to be blocked. It's going to soften the view of those houses from Darby Paoli Road. The problem is that needs to be, you need to make that stronger.
And it's the decision of the Board of Commissioners, who all sold everybody who voted for this, that it would be, you'd only see the rooftops, and that's on tape, and all I can tell you is, I don't understand why anybody on the Shade Tree Commission would be, I mean, you're for a blockage of the view, right?
Don't,
We're for the blockage of the view, but we're also for all the additional trees that they're putting in that they're not even required to put in.
Quick question, is there anything that we can do in our advisory
I just bring up the
capacity?
thing because we were a little shocked, okay? I didn't want a big discussion tonight. I want to let you know because I missed the first one.
No, but
of
quick
your
question
Shade
to
Tree.
that end, though. Since
Yes.
we serve in an advisory capacity
Yes.
to the boards which actually do, make the final judgments on these, is there anything that we can do in an advisory capacity to enhance the view shed which the township purchased to preserve?
One thing I would request, I don't want to speak for John Hosback, but I know he was involved in the review, and with the way that this was more of a reforestation than just we're going to buy X 2.5-inch caliper trees. That being said, I need to let John speak to you on that. So perhaps I could have him send you folks an email, if you don't remember or if you weren't at the last meeting, to discuss that. But I did just go through the draft minutes, and the only thing that's lot by lot was the landscaping for those lots.
Okay, that's good. So the
So
buffer will go on.
the buffer was going in at one time, and John had very specific comments as to what to be planted. And Lisa Thomas also was very specific as to the specific species they wanted to use that were in concert with, and I'm not an arborist, an eastern Pennsylvania forested land. Okay, so Mr. Ward can probably comment on that.
I guess the gray area wasn't, as we were going through the process, as John had brought it up, it was brought to us more as reforestation kind of mitigation here. We're kind of going through and reforesting an area. It wasn't proposed to us as a buffer screen planting.
Well, it was called a buffer.
Yeah,
during the
there is a
conditional use.
buffer.
I'm sorry, it was absolutely sold. There's no doubt in my mind. I'll lay down on tracks on that, what was
Yeah,
sold to the public.
there is a buffer on that
It was to
corner.
protect the
There's no doubt.
residents
But
who
it was done
travel
in
up
a
and down that
different
area.
fashion.
Well, we're not saying your point's not well taken.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
just
We're just
letting-
saying, we're not saying your point's well
Thank you.
taken, but I think it's probably more germane to the full commission. Now, maybe, sometimes there's not a lot of communication. Like if the commission is aware of something that's related to this buffer, they may not, communicate
I
that
think
to us.
they're all
But-
aware of it because they spoke to the public.
Yeah, but it's a matter of.
I mean,
because, certainly,
I just-
we would
we
want
were-
that buffer to be dense enough, and from what you're saying, it
Thank
looks like
you.
it probably isn't.
well, I would
Based on
think that
the number of
deciduous
trees you're
trees,
citing.
I would think that deciduous trees that are under 5 feet, we would all be dead before, and 6 months of the year, we would see the houses. So those are facts, right?
Yeah, I
So
can see your point
that's
on the
all-
density.
That's all
but-
I wanted to share with you, some of the people that have followed this through the conditional use process and our thoughts. It's just meant to be constructive, and hopefully we catch it before, so that everybody gets their things and it's better. That's all. Thank you so much.
I also took that first meeting as more of a preliminary, this is what we're thinking of doing. There was no decisions, final decisions or anything.
No.
That was my understanding. It was more of, keep the plans, we're going to go over this several times.
But also, it's big, and I think we need to pay attention.
I thought they
It's
were
big.
at the point they could go ahead with the buffer.
Yeah, I mean, their intent was to get
Go ahead with the buffer, yeah,
Shade Tree
get that
Commission
going.
approval, yay or nay, and move forward, because they're now, in front of Planning Commission. So they're trying, again, like the train station, they're trying to get all the cogs to the gear to finally move forward to a type of plan approval from the Board of Commissioners.
The Planning Commission did postpone the decisions.
They have to go back to Planning Commission. That was, so they're continued from the last meeting.
We have one more letter, Jack, from, Susan, is this the last one for Rockingham, is it? Yorkshire?
Oh, the
Corner of
Rockingham.
Yorkshire and Rockingham.
Has anybody got the history on this?
Yeah, I found this one. It was a street tree that was taken down by Chaz's tree service.
Okay.
And, we looked into it, and this is his response. Now,
homeowner's
Chaz's was not, Chaz's wasn't on that list of approved, he insisted he was licensed, but, right.
Problem is, a lot of the tree companies don't realize that you have to have, a lot of tree companies don't have a license for
Right. And,
you have paid as licensed to work with the township.
okay. So, can you refresh us on what this letter, what he thinks is our concern, or what he thinks, I mean, are we looking at I'm a little confused on this, because it doesn't really say whether now this was a heritage tree. I think it was, but just minimally a heritage tree. Also, it was a street tree, and I'm not sure, all the street tree some of that is not in our ordinance, is it? The definition of a street tree, is that in another
Well,
ordinance?
the township maintains trees within the right-of-way.
Right.
And the right-of-way varies from street to street and neighborhood to neighborhood. So Beaupre could have a 50-foot right-of-way, and when you drop into Rockingham, that right-of-way could change conceivably. So when we go out, when a resident calls about a tree that they feel is under our purview, we physically measure from the center line of the road to the edge of the right-of-way to make that determination.
But will we look at that any differently in terms of getting approval for them to take it down? I mean, should,
If it's one tree and it's under the purview, if it's one tree and it's not a heritage tree, they would not have to come to this commission.
even though it's a street tree?
Correct.
So,
Doesn't the township have to maintain the street trees?
Well, I'm a little confused too, because this says it was at the back left of the lot.
It's actually right along Yorkshire.
it's, yeah, It's
Okay.
because
if you're
it's
looking,
a corner. That's
right, if you're looking at
Right.
the
It's a
lot
corner,
from
basically.
Rockingham, it's back left, but it's really right on the, not on the edge, maybe 5, 10 feet.
It was within 10
in.
feet of the street.
10 feet
So-
of the street on Yorkshire.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a single tree that's not a heritage tree, that even if it is within that right of way, if a resident wished to do so and did not contact us and they did remove it, we would not object. The only other issue would have been if they had contacted us and said, I have a diseased tree, we'd have brought the arborist out, made a determination. If it was in the right of way, we would have done one of three things: removed it, pruned it, or done nothing if the arborist said, the tree is fine.
Right.
But it's kind of hard for us to tell after the fact.
Right.
He's not a certified arborist, right? Chaz, whatever. Chaz is tree service.
That's what Sue said, no. He's licensed only as a landscaper. And,
Well, he doesn't even write what kind of tree it was on the estimate, so it says tree.
yeah, now, just for your information, that whole first paragraph has nothing to do with this.
On this.
This is just, he's just giving anecdotal. So the first paragraph is misleading because that's not even what we're talking about.
It just came down.
It just came down.
Yeah, it just came down. Yeah, it came down, what, 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago?
What?
The tree.
It came down, it's in my email here. May 14th, came down like either May 14th or May 13th. Because he was taking it down when I came upon them.
So he rewrites it, it's a hazard tree after he's looking at
It was, yeah.
The emails when we initially talked to the guy.
Right.
Well, was it dead or what was the problem?
dead.
Because he's
It
saying.
definitely wasn't
He's
dead.
saying it was dead.
No, it wasn't dead.
All right. So where do we go from here?
I guess the real question is, without being, John Hosback can tell if it was a heritage tree from the stump.
Right.
I cannot. I need to measure it at breast height. So really, I guess it comes down to the fact, was it a heritage tree? If it was not, they were within their ability to remove it. If it was, they should have come to the Shade Tree Commission or had the certified arborist fill out the hazardous tree report.
My understanding was somebody was going to go out and measure the stump, because I have right here on my email, arborist was Chaz Tree, or not arborist, but it turns out he wasn't an arborist. The landscaper was Chaz Tree Service. He said he was licensed but did not know the ordinance or advised customers same. I called and asked them not to grind the stump until they heard from us. So somebody was supposed to go out and take a look at the
I will
stump.
check with Doug Meter to see if he did.
I'm pretty sure they said somebody came out.
I will check with Doug. I don't have a
talked to him
report from
later.
him on that.
Yeah, so I think that would be, obviously, whether we follow up further with this would be related to that finding.
Because it really comes down to, if it was a heritage tree, there could be some action. If it's not a heritage tree, it's really no harm, no foul.
It was close. It was, I couldn't tell from the stump, but it was close to being a heritage, if not a heritage.
Steve, just a comment about the buffer question. I was just under, what we were talking to him about was the kind of trees or spacings of trees or types of trees. I wasn't aware that we were to be cognizant of the buffer requirement of the tree species that they were to be putting back in. So,
Usually you aren't. If you
doesn't-
remember 115 Stratford.
Right.
When he did he combined his compensatory tree requirements with
Right.
his buffer.
And
it
with
was
the
like
neighbors.
300 trees.
Yeah.
Because the buffer requirements were very specific, which are different than
right.
your compensatory tree requirements.
Right.
So.
He incorporated everything into one. Right.
So on Ardrossan, you were showed the buffer, you were showed what they propose as a buffer, because the single lots will come into this commission either because of grading or a stand of trees will be removed. So they're not doing mass clearing like 615 Newtown was,
Right.
or Radnor Walk did, where there was considerable tree clearing. So on this project's a little different. So they were here to show you that scheme, if you will, and I believe John was here. And like I say, John has reviewed that. and was happy with the method of the way they were doing it. So instead of the Chester County farm method where we go every 50 feet on either side of the street and throw in a dogwood and a red maple, they were doing more of a reforestation, and I did meet with them one time on site with our arborist. I accompanied him, and they were trying to continue the type of forest that would have been there had none of this developed. So what I think it's best to do is make sure I will have John provide some type of email or review to this commission so you can understand what his thoughts were on that, because I'm going to defer to him as the expert as to whether this is the way to go. But going a long way around to your question, in our subdivision land development zoning ordinances, we have buffer requirements. That usually does not fall to you.
Right.
You folks the purview of you folks is usually what's being removed, what's being planted, because in the buffers, you can use conifers. You don't have to, whereas our shade tree ordinance, everything's deciduous.
Right.
So that's usually, like on 615 now, Newtown, you look at the compensatory tree replacements because there was like hundreds of them.
Right.
Versus a small subdivision where there's not as many. 115 Stratford, by the time our arborist went through there, he found that many of those trees were diseased and dead, and compensatory plantings weren't even required. So
one of our commissions then should be responsible for approving that buffer based on our buffer ordinances, right?
But I don't think it's not
Not
really
you
defined
folks.
as a buffer.
Yeah, but not us, but one of our,
right, that falls under the review. Gannett Fleming, who was our appointed township engineer, they do a subdivision land development review and a zoning review. And in there is where these things are regarded.
right, so.
But if we approve that as a committee as being acceptable as a buffer, the big
He will
picture-
take with him that the Shade Tree Commission approved this plan.
Right, but the big picture is he has to also be approved by planning as to what is considered a buffer.
That buffer will enter into one of the conversations, I'm sure. I'm hazarding a guess.
It's outside of us.
In plan, yes.
Okay.
Because I know
that's something
Ms.
that
Morgan's
should be
going to come to
discussed.
Planning Commission, and she'll bring this up at Planning Commission, so this will become a topic.